Hello everyone, it is Caitlin, and today we are recovering 2 antique parasols. Alright, so this is the first parasol we're going to cover. Late 1830s, early 1840s-ish, probably more in the 40s end. Faux rosewood handle. And it is missing its, there would have been a little bone tip here. So there are rattan or cane ribs that were painted to look like baleen. Paint's coming off. I'm not going to repaint them because on the underside, which is all we're going to see, the paint's still pretty good. So I'm not going to mess with that. And I don't mind that the paint's coming off on the very top. On each of them there are 7 ribs, which was interesting because I've had this parasol for years, at least 3 years, and I could have sworn it had 8 ribs. There are 3 on this side and 4 on this side, and 3 and 4 makes 7. I do teach first grade. I am at least good at that math. There is a finial. It is bone. It's tucked away right now, and I'm not going to go grab it. But we do have finial. I want to keep it in the same place so that I don't lose it. But it's decently long, maybe about 3 inches. A little bone finial there. This is the fabric it came to me on. I don't think it's the original fabric. Mostly because none of these lines were matched up. And also because usually earlier parasols use the selvage edge and not hemming it. So it kind of leads me to suspect this was a recover. So we're going to recover it today. I have chosen some pink silk left over from another project. Mostly because there's a fashion plate of a pink parasol. And for some reason I've always wanted a pink parasol. That may have something to do with Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, which I remember reading that as a little girl. So yes, we're going to use this as a pattern piece. And it has this little bone button that would have been used to hold the parasol together. But let's go ahead and get cutting and put the frame aside. Alright, so typically earlier parasols were cut on the selvage. I do not have enough of a selvage, so we're going to attempt this without a selvage. Sides already have a seam allowance. And this parasol was not lined. It probably wasn't lined originally just because earlier parasols tend to feature lining less. So we're going to sew these together, all 7 pieces. And I'm going to pull out my original 1830s one in just a second. And we'll kind of see what kind of stitches they use and sort of use that as our guide here. And let's look at what kind of seams they did carefully. Okay, running stitch, not particularly tiny, and not in the same color as the silk is. Okay, let me just clarify what my seam allowance was. It's like right here. So it's on the small side of 1/4 inches. Okay, you can do this. Basically, we're going to sew all these pieces together, and we're going to pin it on the frame. And you can use safety pins or straight pins to do this. I tend to use straight pins because they are what's available to me. Even though I have a whole box of safety pins, I just tend to not to use them. And then we'll fine-tune any fitting issues that we had, at which point we're going to hem it and sew it on the frame for good and reattach the finial. Alright, we have a cover sewn together. Let's work on some fitting. What I'm going to do for this is put the cover on. Alright, so now let's try to open it. Oh, look at that. That actually looks really good. Let me move it up so you can see it. That looks really good. Okay. The only wrinkles I really see are the wrinkles that are, okay, I just kind of snapped that, so that's going to be wrinkles now. But the only wrinkles I really see are the ones I need to iron out anyway. This looks like it fits really well here, up on the top. Yay, that was easy. Okay. I don't think I've ever done a parasol first time around. Alright, so in theory we should be done because we should have cut this on the selvage, but yeah, things happen, and I did not have enough of the velvet, so we're going to make a very tiny narrow hem. I did manage to find some silk pink floss that we're going to do the hem in, that way it's really invisible. Other than that, this project's basically done. So I'm going to iron this out, iron a hem, and we'll do the hemming real quick and then sew it on. With the hem in place, it is time to put it on the frame. So let's go ahead and do what we did before when we were testing it. Stick that in there. We're going to check the fit one last time, although in theory all I did was hem it, so it shouldn't make that big of a difference. It's a little tight, but not bad, and I can work with those ribs. So I'm going to take my gray thread again. If I can find the end of my gray thread, there it is. And in here, I'm just going to take this, go through it all. We're going to do that several times. I'm going to tie that off, make sure that it's nice and secure. Also going to work a little bit on the interior ribs, putting those where they need to be, just to make sure that the parasol stays on target. So sometimes, like right where this the inner ribs meet the outer ribs, make a couple stitches there. This helps a little bit with parasol ribs that are trying to bow out just slightly. If they're bowing too much, then you're just too short to cover, but it's a little bit of bowing. You can work with it with this. Here's our pretty pink parasol. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the button, and I did find some gray ribbon, which I think is acceptable. So we're going to put that on. I gotta find where I put my needle, because that was here a second ago. Where'd it go? Usually I find them with my feet, because I step on them. That's a pin. Alright, we're going to use this one. It's not the one I was looking for, but you know, it's a needle. I think I'm going to use the pink silk thread for this. And here's my little gray ribbon. I'm going to put this here and go ahead and stitch this down a little bit. Kind of just to make sure it's going to stay. And then we'll hide this with the actual button. Oops. Alright. There, hey, look, there's the needle I was looking for. Okay, cool. Didn't lose a needle after all. So there is a complete, actually no, it's not completed, we need a finial. It's just a hair over 3 inches tall. And sometimes they are glued in, sometimes they're just pressed in. And this one stays pretty well when it's pressed in. So there is our gorgeous second parasol. So here's this one, dating to the 1860s. It is a metal framed parasol, so it's metal ribs, metal inner ribs. It's a folding parasol, clearly, folds. The upper shaft is wood, this is bone. The finial is bone as well. I need to make sure this comes off. I've had it come off before, but then the glue that's in there kind of stuck it, so I need to be very careful getting this off because I have a complete finial. Yeah, it's brass in the upper shaft, and it actually is a marquis. Let me move the camera up so you can see a little bit better. Alright, so this marquis is a little bit fun. So usually you just see another little hinge. This one is hidden. It's kind of fun. You actually just pull this little brass bit down, and it just folds. It's really awesome. There were lots of patents for this type of thing in the marquis, so I assume it's one of those. Don't know exactly where this parasol is from. I assume maybe France-ish. European, it looks European to me. Particularly with the little patent there. So when I got it, they're not really nails, it's just wire. It's very soft, and that's how they keep all these pieces together. And one of them had come loose slightly, so it got stuck where you couldn't, you could like move it slightly, you could move it here, but like that wasn't helping the marquis situation at all. So I did have to pound it with a hammer. Okay, I did not do that. Let's rewind. I tapped it gently with a mallet. to kind of get that back where it should, and then now it works when I have it correctly. There you go. So this one came to me. It's an original cover was black silk taffeta. Here it is, parts of it. And so yeah, just black silk taffeta. It is completely hand sewn with black thread, and then it has these cute little scallops. And so these are actually scallops on scallops. So they're hard to see because it's kind of frayed, but these are tiny little scallops within the scallop. And I have a tool that's going to do this for me, and which I'll show you when we get to that point. But yeah, it's a black silk cover. It also had a black silk lining, which I can't seem to find right now. This is what my desk area looks like right now. It's somewhere in this mess. But anyway, it's just black silk, and it's thinner than the taffeta. So I bought habit eye. So here's the fabric we're working with. And it had a full lace cover that was, I mean, when I talk about literal shatters. Yeah, so I bought some lace. It's going to be an edging because I couldn't find any that was the full lace thing. And there are fashion plates that do show parasols with a lace edging. So I'm going to keep it until I can find a actual lace overlay. So let's go ahead and get cutting. I'm going to go ahead and get this finial off very gently because that would suck to break one of the only finials that is bone that is complete in my collection. So very carefully take that off, and then we'll start working with all the fun bits. It's so much easier to do solids than it is to have to match stripes or patterns or whatever. So I always do like working with solids, although honestly the patterns are always the prettiest. And usually linings are a slight bit shorter than the actual fabric, and they're finished the same way. Alright, so we have a cover. We're going to see if it fits. The optimistic part of me is like, yeah, I'm getting good at this. This is going to work. And then there's the realistic part of myself that's going, there's no way this is going to work that perfectly 2 times in a row. Alright, so let's see. Alrighty, yeah, it's a little big. Particularly up in this area. Yeah, I just need to overall take up just a hair more on all the seams. So I need to go run the seams again. Alright, attempt 2.0. And let us see. Alright, moment of truth. Ooh, I like that a lot better. Okay. Yes, it's a bit wonky up there. Hang on. There we go. So yeah, that shape is better. I do like that. Put the finial on and see how bad it really is. It really isn't awful once you put the finial on. I think I just went a little too far. I think if I just take a little bit of the seam out and kind of wave that out, I think I'll be good. So I'm going to work on that, and when I get that shaping right, we'll go ahead and finish off the edges using the little pinking machine. Alright, so here's my little pinky machine. I got it from a taxidermy shop of all places. It's not a period one at all. It's a modern thing. I think they use it for felting or some taxidermy purpose. I don't even know. This is it. And so it has scallops, and there's scallops within the scallops. Basically, it's hand cranking, and so I put the fabric in here, and I just kind of pull the thingy, and out comes scallops. But you gotta kind of keep it even, otherwise it doesn't always work. So we'll do the same thing with the lining in a little bit. I just gotta go over the lining again because I hadn't fitted that. Alright, we can go ahead and put it on the frame. And I just brought a needle over here, so I gotta find that. There it is. I know it's like black on black on black, so I apologize. But essentially there's a hole in the ribs, and I'm just sewing through it, attaching with the fabric. And I'm going to go several stitches in. Alright, last step before we put on lace, I am just, like we did last time, making sure this is attached over by where the inner ribs meet the outer ribs. Now we have lace to worry about. And I have the lace sewn in a circle, and I also put a gathering thread through it. I'm going to fold it and mark it in fourths. I'm also going to mark fourths on the parasol itself. I'm going to put it, I want it just slightly going down, but not a whole lot. So now I'm just going to pull on the gathering thread up here and kind of watch as the lace slowly starts to fit. There we go. So I do want to like kind of pull those out a little bit, making sure that the lace is coming down to where it needs to come down carefully and kind of spread them out. It really isn't very gathered at all, which is exactly what it needs to not be very gathered, so that's good. I think I'm going to use the gathering thread itself because I had to pull it out, so it's nice and long now to actually sew on the lace. That's looking pretty good, so yay. So we have a almost completed parasol. Look at it, it's so pretty. Alright, so we're going to line it. And first step to lining is to get the lining over the knob, which is one of the reasons that they unscrew. Super helpful. Most of my bone parasol bits, they unscrew at least in one spot, if not in multiple spots. So I'm just going to stick the lining, through the hole. Stick the handle through the hole of the lining. Move it all the way over. Alright. Now we get to play a fun game called Does This Actually Fit? And I'll fit even better here once I tack it down right there. Let's go ahead and put this back on before I forget, because I'd hate to lose it or break it. I find it often easier. Okay, I'm going to take some of these off because I'm going to sew this here first. Alright, so there's the basis of the parasol. So here that is. Let's go ahead and put the finial back on because, yeah, it's on there good and tight. Okay, so there's that. Now all we have to do is put on a tassel and we can be done. Alright, we are going to make a tassel. Ignore all the color stuff on there. I'm making lots of tassels today. Well, 3. 2 of these are going to be for a mantle. That's what all the pretty colors are for. So, for our tassel, parasol, I have a little wood bead here. And I think we're going to do something very similar to what we did with the black silk bodice and the little buttons that were highly decorated. I'm going to cover it in silk first. As far as to how big I cut my circle, I kind of just put the bead in the middle of fabric, scrunched it up, and just cut, and then I just formed it into a circle from there. If you've been on the channel long, you know I don't do things very precisely. But usually the Victorians didn't either, so I don't feel so bad about it. Now we're going to stick our little bead right in here, and basically make ourselves a thread cover button. Alright, so I have this stuff, which is tire silk. It's buttonhole thread, basically. That's what we're going to use to make our tassel. And I don't necessarily need it too terribly big. I am going to just wrap it, I think, around my hand. And that will make a tassel about that long. Take it off my fingers here. And have a nice little bit of fringe here. I'm going to hold this. I'll wrap this around the very top here. Cut myself a little tail here so I can use some sewing skills to sew this into the button. I'm gonna make a little knot here though. There we go. Yay. Now I gotta cut through all these. Alright, so I have been working on this tassel. So I took the thing that we made and I used a smaller ball because I didn't like how big the ball on top looked with it. I might actually cut down some of this to be more like this length, but anyway. So yeah, covered it like we did before, but I just used a smaller ball. I put the tassel in there first before putting the ball on top, and that seemed to help, getting it in there and such. So I have a strip of my So I have a length of my silk buttonhole twist here. And I think we're going to do basically what I did before with the black silk dress, which is to start doing basically a buttonhole stitch. And we're going to do that around the tassel, going back in the same hole every time, or at least as close to it as I can manage. Oops. And now we're basically going to do a buttonhole stitch around. So in each of those little holes there, I'm going to stick my needle. Where did I go last time? So we're going to go in here this time. And kind of just letting the thread catch itself. Hopefully not any of my little threads here. And of course we're starting a small little round, and we're going to need to get bigger to go round. And so eventually, probably next row, I'm going to start doing 2 stitches per loop. Basically, I'm just going around in loops. Alright, so I have my little tassel here. All done. I just went down all the way down to the bottom like we talked about, and stuck my needle back up so I have a nice long tail. And there's our little tassel. I'm going to stick it up here. Maybe kind of stick it like that. I think I want it inside the little finial bit. I think. There we go. Yay, pretty tassel. Not going to be terribly noticeable, but it is, like, it adds to it. So, now both of our parasols are done. I can go ahead and put on a pretty dress, and we'll talk about them. And here she is. Beautiful little pink 1840s parasol. So I am in the 1840s. Technically, this is a wrapper, not a dress. But my dresses are all back closing. And although last time I did not have trouble getting into the back closing dresses, I figured I didn't want to deal with it today. So, yeah, she's still missing her little bit at the end. But perhaps eventually I'll find something for her, or at least find someone who could reproduce something that would fit at the end for her. But other than that, that is this lovely little parasol. Suppose I should go get dressed in the 1860s now, and we can look at that parasol. And here's the second one. Isn't she lovely? With her little tassel that's just hanging down. It's just so precious. I love that we did the little needlework on it. I think it looks great. But yeah, she's a little dirty now. I don't know, she's been sitting on the counter, so it's not like she's been doing anything, but there she is. And of course, in her little down position. Very nice and small. I can tuck her into my pocket, which is somewhere. So yeah, she can fit into this thing, which is nice. So if I'm ever shopping, I can just tuck her in there, not have to worry about it. I can also tuck her underneath here to do things and have both my hands free. It's not overly obtrusive to have a giant, parasol. Do a nice little small one. So really do like the 1860s parasols. And there she is. And her little marquis hinge. Just like that. Very nice. So she does shade the face from the side and also from the top. Yeah. And I have a very high brim bonnet today, so it's hard to see, but there we are. She will hide my face, which is really all you need hidden in the 1850s and 60s is just the face, because I would have been, of course I would have been wearing gloves if I was going outside, which is when I'd be wearing a parasol anyway. But really that's the only thing that's uncovered is my face. So really, this does a really good job, and actually a little bit more than it needs to be. So yeah, nice little 1860s parasol, very lovely. So I guess we can look at her all the way around. But there she is. So this is my favorite 1860s bonnet. This one I bought off Danielle from Timely Tresses. And it has a pretty little bonnet veil that I made. There she is. One day we're going to make a whole bunch of bonnet veils because I want a bonnet veil for each one of my bonnets. We just haven't gotten to that point yet. But essentially they're the sunglasses of the 1860s and 50s too. So it's just to kind of darken your vision so the sun doesn't create a glare. But yeah, there she is. How lovely. Stick this back. But yeah, I'm very happy with how both of them turned out. They're absolutely precious. I have a really good 1860s bonnet now. I had the really, really fancy one that was purple that didn't necessarily go with all my dresses, and then I had American Marquis. So this is a nice, still very fancy French parasol that's still very neutral, which I needed in my life. So this was something I definitely needed to get done. Very happy with it. I think it turned out really well. Good mid, I think, 1860s parasol. But yeah, that is her, and of course we have the 1840s one done as well. So yay! 2 things that have been on my desk to do for actually a year. It's been over a year. Um, yeah, so it was time. It was time to get them done. I was just avoiding it. Even though it doesn't take me very long, I did the 1840s one in the morning, and then I took a little bit longer to do this one, maybe a day, just because I had to make the tassel too. But honestly, that's not bad. It really wasn't worth waiting. It really wasn't worth avoiding it for a whole year. But they're done now. And of course, I had nothing for the 1840s as far as parasols went. So very glad both of them needed to be done. They are both absolutely precious. They actually worked pretty well as far as recovering them. Had a little bit of issues with this, and there's still a little bit of rippling, but actually it's not bad at all. So we're going to leave it. Lining doesn't look half that bad either, which if you see my parasol videos, you will know that usually I can get lining or cover and not both. So I'm actually very impressed that they both look that good. I mean, definitely the cover's better than the lining, but it's not bad. And really I could blame the wrinkling on, just wrinkles from being folded up. So yeah, that's what we're going to claim. So yeah, very fun, very useful little things, and I'm glad we got them done. So thank you so much for joining me today as we've recovered some parasols. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you back here on Monday.